has suffered to lead his people into the land of freedom. He is the Redeemer and
It also complained about arrears in schools because of the erratic release of funds meant for perishable foods. Because of these challenges, the group is considering the closure of schools if nothing changes by July 15th. It is also considering recommendations that parents either feed their wards or pick them home until all the situations are normalized. The Education Ministry gave assurances that by July 12th, the challenges would have been addressed. The Minister of Education, Dr. Yao Osei Educhum, also met with the leadership of CHAS. But schools are still complaining about the shortages despite the commitment made by the government. Because of
use the entire revenue we got from taxes and others, it will not be able to meet our interest payment alone for the first quarter. We will have a deficit of over 1 billion Ghana cedis. So we have to use a total of about 108% of our tax revenue to be able to service just interest on debt. So as we speak, the government could not meet its payment of first quarter debt. So Ghana is on the serious threat of a default. Okay? Now, for the same first quarter of the 2022, we're supposed to pay contractors 1.3 billion of arrears for 2020 and others. 1.3 billion. We managed to pay only 38 million. So you see that it's like a drop of water in it. 1.3 billion. You couldn't, not even 100 billion, 100 million, but 38 billion, 38 million. Out of 1.3 billion. You see? Additional 245 million that was supposed to be tied for contractors, zero payment. Fertilizer importers who imported fertilizer and the government owed them about 450 million Ghana cedis. No, you're not paid. I can continue to mention arrears and it's still all over the place. So that's why we say that the economy is bankrupt. They have run our economy aground to the point that we are bankrupt and can't pay a lot of our debts. And so this is the sorry state in which they have left the economy. And that is why I said that the least Dr. Bawumia and the economic management team and President Nana Akufo-Addo should have done was to seriously apologize to Ghanaians. They are living on the legacies of a government that you are in a hurry to condemn that government hasn't done anything. And you are living on their legacies. They came and met resources that the government left. Look, I can tell you, you ask workers, when President Mahama was there, by 25th of that month, if it delayed even to 26, 27, people thought the salaries are delayed. In that month, today, even as parliamentarians, so that they pay you 2 weeks into the next month. And for some, they get it closer to the next month, to the end of the next month. Just compare. Okay? So clearly, you know, somebody who cannot carry his head load, he blames his head part. It is abundantly clear today that the MPP government of Nana Akufo-Addo, Dr. Bawumia, has been a monumental failure. They are a huge disappointment unto themselves and to Ghanaians. These were people who said borrowing was an act of lazy governance. Now they have borrowed us into extinction. They have a par excellence borrowing record, more than any other government in the history of this country, for reckless and irresponsible borrowing. That is what has landed us there. President Mahama left office January 7th, 2017, with the total debt from Ghana's independence to that period of 120 billion. Today we are almost at the 400 billion threshold mark. In 5.5 years, Nana Akufo-Addo and his people have added closer to 280 billion Ghana cedis to our debt. So you can see, with very little to show for it. Today, inflation is no longer galloping, it's flying. We are at a 30% threshold. In fact, there are people who estimate that the inflation should be over 40%. But officially, they try to keep it around 29, get it to 30%. So you just see that.
I think it's become very necessary as a member of parliament for that clue to make these comments regarding the interactions we had with NIA. And I take note of the comments made by my very good friend, the Majority Chief Whip, with regard to that. I must say that it is not in the interest of the NPP for the NIA to work the way they should work. I believe it is a deliberate action by the NPP to stifle the NIA with resources so that they will have control over the registration process. First of all, you may be aware that the recruitment for NIA staffing in the districts was done through the party. In other clue, I'm told the director, the person leading it, initially was the constituency youth organizer of NPP. Currently, we are told is the brother of a youth organizer from Esojaman. Let me tell you what is going on. If you take the 2021 census results from Adaklu, there are about 38,000 people registered, captured under that. The MIA is supposed to register 15 years and above. If you take the age, of people who are 15 years and above in the Adaklu register, it will be about 25,000 people who are qualified. Guess how many people have been registered in Adaklu so far? About 3,200. So Jim Mensah is trying to tell me that whenever he does his register, only 3,200 people in Adaklu qualify to vote. My brothers and sisters, somebody must call Jim Mensah to order. He's dragging this country into chaos. We have the opportunity to call him to order. The NPP deliberately does not want NIA to have the resources to register eligible people. This government has got money to pay 200 million Ghana cedi to dig a hole beside parliament to call it that they want to build cathedral. Building of a cathedral and having a peaceful election, which one is more important to Ghana? I'm saying that my brother, the Majority Chief Whip, says that we are trying to create a bad blood between or demonize NIA. No, it is not the fault of NIA. In fact, much of the NIA staff are NPP card-bearing members. So if somebody is demonizing anything, which is the action we are taking is to make sure that this deliberate action by the NPP is corrected. My brothers and sisters, Jim Mensah and NPP are dragging our country towards chaos. Let's call them to order. You cannot register only about 3,000 people in Adaklu. And out of that, even 1,000 people haven't even got their card yet. Guess what? There are places in Adaklu that you cannot generate a digital address. What the hell are you talking about that if you want to register for Ghana card, you should bring a digital address? Are they supposed to conjure it? This exercise, I agree that we must have Ghana card, but trying to make it that compulsory. Today, somebody has got money at the bank. He's sick. He needs access to his money to buy drugs. A draconian declaration that if you don't have Ghana card, you can't have access to your money. This is mindless way of doing things.
He has labored, he has suffered to lead his people into the land of freedom. He is the Redeemer and he has labored, he has suffered to lead his people into the land of freedom. He is the Redeemer and
I'm going up. A very good morning to you wherever you are. Thank you very much for joining us live on Pan-African Television. It's time for the mother of all talk shows, Alhaji and Alhaji. I just hope you had a lovely week. Well, we are live on your television sets. We are also live on Facebook. We are live on YouTube. On Facebook, we are on Pan-African Television. On YouTube, we are on Pan-African TV. If you are using any of those platforms, make sure you take the opportunity to use the comment section and share comments on the issues we'll be discussing on the mother of all talk shows, Alhaji and Alhaji. Here we say it as it is, no matter who is involved in the end, we'll leave you better educated. This show is live on Radio Gold, and several other affiliates across the country. Thank you for your time once again. This week has been quite a week. Started with organized labor actually joining the demands for cola, but ended with a 15% agreement between them and government. And also, preparations for the Congress that's currently ongoing, the NPP Delegates Congress, intensified. As we speak now, when you go to the Accra Sports Stadium, everything is set. Delegates are headed there. They'll be electing the people who will lead the party at the national level for the next 4 years. The party that's currently in government. That government had an IMF team visit them since last week. They completed this week, and they've issued a statement. The problem is that our economy is not on good legs. Question is, what will be done about it? So we'll spend some time talking about those two issues. We'll start with the NPP Delegates Congress, because it's currently ongoing. And then we'll move on to the matter of the International Monetary Fund's visit to Ghana and the things we're hearing about that particular visit. And then we'll go to the schools, because there has been food shortage at the various senior high schools across the country. If we have time, we'll conclude with the fact that the Electoral Commission says if you are a new voter, they are putting together a CI that would deny you the use of passport or guarantor system. That got some of us onto the voters register that was compiled by Madam Jean Mensah-led Electoral Commission in 2020. What you use is Ghana card. If you don't have any, you won't get onto the voters register. If we have some time, we'll discuss that issue. My name is Sana Nomo. Once again, welcome to the program for today. Let's move on to the discussion, because we're already a bit behind time, and start with the matter of the NPP Delegates Conference. But in the studio with me this morning, on my panel, Mr. Kwesi Pratt Jr. joins us. He is the General Secretary of the Socialist Movement of Ghana. Gabriela Tete is also in the studio with me. Wonderful to see her after it's been quite a while. You've been very busy.
This issue.
And then we'll be joined shortly by Honorable John Gina, President of Parliament for Yape Kusogo, and one person who has also been missing in action for a while, Mr. Bujie Bradman from the NPP's communication team. So that will complete our panel for today. Like I said, we'll start with the matter of the NPP National Delegates Conference. And I get to start with Gabriela Tete, who is a member of the NDC actually. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you very much for having me. It's been a long time. I was on this platform.
And you celebrated a dry birthday yesterday.
I did. But it wasn't that dry. In terms of gifts and stuff, it was dry. But the goodwill and the kind words, the thoughts, it's nice to be thought well of by people. So I want to say a big thank you to all those who wished me a happy birthday, and those in whose thoughts I was, even if it was briefly for a few seconds. I am very grateful for that. And let me also say a very good morning to our viewers. Thank you once again for having me here. There's a gentleman who saw the flyer and said that I must wish him a good morning on air, so he knows that I actually read his message. Big Malam, good morning to you wherever you are. NPP Delegates Conference. I wish we'll talk about something better than NPP Delegates Conference, because nothing much is going to change with the hierarchy of the NPP, at least to the best of my knowledge. The party is going to elect leaders who will still be kowtowing to the whims of their monarchistic president and his government, who will be dictated to and be pulled along like poodles based on the whims and caprices of Nana Akufo-Addo and his cohorts. As the NPP delegates and their foot soldiers, how they feel about Ghana currently. And many of them are so disappointed. It is not a delegates conference who is just going to transfer wealth from now the economically powerful to the foot soldiers in just their one-time endeavor just to transfer funds. And then it's over and done with. I don't particularly see any improvement or any change in the NPP as a political party, as a political movement, especially based on where power currently resides. If you ask the common man when we go to market, doesn't know NDC NPP. The economic malaise that we find ourselves in is felt by everybody. And everybody in this country is disappointed in NPP, led by Akufo-Addo and Baumia. There is nothing they will go and say on that platform that will change our situation today or tomorrow. So as far as I, Gabriela, am concerned, I don't even want to waste my time discussing that endeavor. I heard this morning that Pan-African was denied access to their grounds because accreditation. But accreditation still gives you access.
Yes.
It's because according to them, according to sources on the ground, they hate you with passion. I'm very sorry that you are enduring this under a so-called Akufo-Addo administration. But it tells you what exactly the NPP is capable of doing. It is a one-sided party, one-sided movement. And that's the beginning and the end of the matter. The rest of us, we can jump into the sea and nobody will give a damn. So please, don't let me waste my time talking about NPP delegates conference, because for me, it is a non-starter and nothing will happen and change for the lot of Ghanaians with their delegates conference.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much. That is Gabriela Tete's view on the NPP delegates conference that we are starting with. One thing is for sure, the incumbent chairman is not contesting, so they will elect a new chairman. The general secretary is contesting. The national youth organizer is not contesting. The national youth organizer is seeking to replace him. So they'll be electing a new national youth organizer. But we'll see how all that plays out. The national women organizer is also seeking re-election, but that is expected to be a very tough contest. We've been joined by Honorable John Jinapo. Good morning.
Good morning, my brother.
Nice to see you.
Good.
Well, guess your views on the NPP National Delegates Conference.
Well, I've been monitoring it this morning. It's been quite interesting. It does appear that there's a system that supports particular candidates, i.e. the presidency, and others from the party who believe that it's about party first. And so if you listen to commentary, if you monitor what is happening, it's quite obvious that the presidency and government machinery has a slate, and then others. I think one of the key areas has to do with the position of General Secretary. It does appear that it's getting keener and keener. Yesterday, when I was monitoring the press, it's about those who believe in competence, those who believe that you need a formidable General Secretary, and what the presidency and government wants. So it's quite tough, and some of these elections, there could be surprises. It's very, very difficult to predict. Even at our constituency levels, sometimes it's very, very difficult to predict. And the person who is tipped as a front runner could lose. And sometimes a dark horse can come true. This morning I'm told that there's started some inducement. I've heard some candidates complaining that, as usual, goodies are being shared left, right, and center. And so let's wish them well. I wish that they had given all media houses accreditation, including yourself, because you also occupy a niche where you could disseminate information, and it would be in their own interest if they allow media plurality and the reportage. The party itself appeared to have seen or realized that there's some level of opulence. Because for the party to come up with a directive that all billboards be removed across the length and breadth of the country, albeit very, very late, it tells you that the party itself is quite concerned about the level of profligacy and the level of opulence. We would keep monitoring. Normally, when a government is in power, there isn't that much that the party executives can do, because normally about the verdict of the government. So beyond electing executives, it's about the performance of those in authority. And in as much as incumbency can be advantageous, it also comes with a downside, because you are in the hot seat. And so I've had a lot of analysis about the incumbent general secretary. The seats they had, the number of votes they got even in opposition, having come to power and claiming to have done so well, the drop in the absolute number of votes, the number of MPs that they have now, and all that. There's a big push. You realize the chairman is not contesting again. I'm sure he's seen some signs on the wall. Everybody would have wished to contest, but I'm sure that he's seen that, look, the grounds is not that good, the grounds is not that fertile. And that young man, Justin Kodua, seemed to be doing a lot within the system. My own friend Opare, I thought, having worked with him and knowing his capacity, he would have made so much impact. But it does appear that it's a two-horse race between John Bodu and Justin Kodua. So we would observe sooner than later, the NDC would also be going for their delegates congress. So let's see how it goes. We'll keep monitoring. But for me, the most important thing is to focus on this government and to focus on their economic policies, their programs, and its impact on the general populace as far as Ghanaians are concerned.
Thank you. Thank you. Nice to see you. Well, a lot of talk about, because we advertise seriously that we'll be taking the conference live. Well, I'll let Mr. Pratt speak. When I come back, I'll tell you the story of what happened at the gates. Mr. Pratt.
Well, I walked into the studio an African television team was to cover the NPP Delegates Conference has not been given accreditation. I was wondering why. And those who got in touch with the NPP communication team actually recorded the conversation. So I asked to listen to the conversation, and I was shocked. The Deputy Communications Director of the NPP actually told the Pan-African team that he has a job to do, and he knows the media which can do that job for him. And then he advised them to go back to the office, drink cocoa, and watch the proceedings on other networks. I mean, this is so very shocking. Given the claims that the New Patriotic Party has made about media freedoms and so on, it's so very shocking. Attacks on press freedom include denial of access. Denial of access is a major attack on press freedom. And I feel scandalized by this development. In any case, the claim by the Deputy Director that they are looking for media which will do their work. What is that work that they're doing? And what kind of media can do their work and what kind of media cannot do their work? So clearly, issues of credibility of reporting comes up. Because if they're selecting media houses which can only do their bidding, what then is the credibility of the reports we're going to get today and tomorrow and so on? I'm disgusted by this development, and I think that it's important for all right-thinking persons to condemn this development. This is the first time in my life that I'm hearing that some selected media houses are being banned from the Congress of a party, a political party, especially a political party in power. Normally at these congresses, even opposing political parties are invited, to participate, to observe, and so on. Now we have a situation where some media houses are being deliberately banned from covering, the Congress. Now, I think it's most disgusting. Now, what reason can there be? This event is being held at the stadium, which has a capacity of more than, I understand, 30,000. So there's no limitation to space. And the only reason may be orientation that they are not comfortable with. And this is so very disgusting. So very disgusting in this day and age. In fact, I'm looking to see the list of media houses which have been allowed to cover this Congress. And that should be a very interesting list. I'm waiting to see the list of those who are allowed in. And having said all of this, I think it's important to take note that this Congress is taking place at a time of extreme national crisis. Extreme national crisis. When the debt to GDP ratio is estimated at 97%, that's a broken economy. When we're spending 128% of total national revenue on public sector emoluments and debt servicing, we are in very deep crisis. So I'm sure that everybody is watching this Congress very keenly and trying to pick signals which may show that there's going to be a departure from the incompetence, from the mismanagement that has led us to this situation, or that we're going to continue on the same path to total national destruction. And I believe that's why this Congress happens to be a very interesting Congress. Now, just listen to my brother and friend, John Jinapo, and in his analysis, he's talking about two camps, virtually. I mean, the official camp, and by the official camp, I mean the camp which is supported by the executive, the presidency, and so on, and the camp which is independent, and so on. Now, the outcome of this Congress should be interesting on that score, you understand? It should be interesting on that score because we do know of the machinations intended to ensure that a particular person emerges as presidential candidate of the New Patriotic Party. So the outcome of this Congress will give us some indications as to what is happening and what the positions may be and so on. Now, if you listen to even the media, which has been accredited to cover this conference this morning, you cannot miss the complaints about influence buying. You understand? You cannot miss the complaints about massive doses of resources, especially money, to influence delegates. Now, last week, I warned that given the crisis in which we are, given the agitation for the improvement in the conditions of work and life of our people, if this level or some level of opulence is displayed, it can only add fuel to the raging fire. And I'm surprised that this advice has been ignored. If party bigwigs have tons of money to throw around and so on, then you cannot tell workers that they are not entitled to 20% of their salaries as COLA. If you throw around money at this level, then certainly something must be wrong. At a time when everybody else is suffering, then something must be wrong. But that's up to them. I mean, that's not my business. My business is that every political party especially political parties registered with the National Electoral Commission to contest elections, are public institutions. And to the extent that they are public institutions, the Ghanaian people have a right, in fact a duty, to scrutinize their activities. And also to the extent that all of them potentially may be in government and may be in control of national resources, we have a legitimate right and duty to follow what they do, to raise questions, and to criticize them. Now, I do hope that delegates at this conference will take account of the party's own history and performance in the electoral process. I do hope that the delegates will be minded by the fact that the MPP lost so many seats in the last elections, and that the MPP's votes, the votes that it's claimed they got in the previous elections, dropped by more than 500,000. These are significant indications. These are very, very significant indications. And party members who want to see their party progress, party members who want to revive their party members who genuinely believe in breaking the eight, whether it's possible or not is not my business. But they have a right to dream. And they can dream about breaking the eight, you understand? So party members who genuinely believe in breaking the eight must look at the party's performance in the last elections. They must do their calculations. And they must determine for themselves the team which can lead them to breaking the eight or breaking the 2,000. That's their business.
Thank you very much, Mr. Pratt. The story is told already. And so we'll find some cocoa and bread. We'll sit behind our television sets and watch those who are going to do the work of the MPP. That's what we're told. I wish them all the best anyway. Wish them. We're still expecting Mujib Rahman to join us. But in the meantime, if you just join us, the Mother of All Talk Shows, Alhaji and Alhaji, live on Pan-African Television and, of course, on Radio Gold. And I'll be reading some of your messages as we move along. But I'd like to jump right into the next topic because it's important to this discussion. Because yesterday, the party actually promised that they will ensure that there's no horse trading on the grounds. That is not what is happening because of the image it will paint of a party that's leading a government that's struggling. Well, this is the IMF after visiting Ghana. Just a few portions of a statement they issued. They said Ghana is facing a challenging economic and social situation amid an increasingly difficult global environment. The fiscal and debt situation has severely worsened following the COVID-19 pandemic. At the same time, investors' concerns have triggered credit rating downgrades, capital outflows, loss of external market access, and rising domestic borrowing costs. In addition, it continues the global economic shock caused by the war in Ukraine is hitting Ghana at a time when the country is still recovering from the COVID-19 pandemic shock and with limited room for maneuver. These adverse developments have contributed to slowing economic growth, accumulation of unpaid bills, a large exchange rate depreciation, and a surge in inflation. The IMF team continues. The IMF team held initial discussions on a comprehensive reform package to restore macroeconomic stability and anchor debt sustainability. The team made progress in assessing the economic situation and identify policy priorities in the near term. The discussions focused on improving fiscal balances in a sustainable way while protecting the vulnerable and the poor, ensuring credibility of the monetary policy and exchange rate regimes, preserving financial sector stability, and designing reforms to enhance growth, create jobs, and strengthen governance. And this is how they continue. The IMF staff will continue to monitor the economic and social situation closely and engage in the coming weeks with the authorities on the formulation of the enhanced domestic program that could be supported by an IMF arrangement and with broad stakeholder consultation. Now, we understand that the team was in Parliament, met the Finance Committee. There are even rumors that the minority was pleaded upon to agree to an immediate $1 billion loan to help ameliorate the situation. Honorable John Jinapo is a member of the Finance Committee. So I'll start with him.
Thank you. First of all, let me deal with this issue of the IMF pleading with us to approve that $1 billion facility. Let me put on record that the IMF did not plead with us. What happened is we, as a minority side, wanted to meet them. But we thought that we had serious issues about the national accounting framework, and we thought we ought to share that with them. In fact, at the spring meetings, we met the IMF. They told us they were having a meeting with Ken Oforiatta and his team. So we said we would wait. When they finish, we would also want to engage them. So I do recall myself, Atufosun, and Adongo met some officials. They informed us at the meeting that Ken had assured them that everything was on course and that the country was able to shoulder the economic burden, i.e. the debt situation. We gave counter proposals because you could tell that things were moving out of gear, things were moving in the opposite direction. So they took our points and all that. Lo and behold, we found ourselves in an IMF program, despite assurances. Even 1 week before we announced that we're going for the IMF program, the ministers kept assuring that in as far as MPP stayed in office, Ghana would never go to the IMF. Even though we knew, if you looked at the fiscal framework, it was obvious that we were heading for doom. So the chairman of our committee, Kogo Kwatin, then insisted that why don't we all meet? I said, fine, as a committee, we can. Now there were some key issues that came up at the meeting. The first thing is that the IMF agrees with the minority's position that this economy is in very, very difficult situation. And you see, the IMF is very diplomatic. So when they say that your economic situation is worsening, it's loaded. It's very, very loaded. It means that we're really having problems. Because if you look at the Ministry of Finance's summary of financial data, between January, February, March, total revenue for this country was 12 billion. Debt servicing was 13 billion. So our total revenue, not tax revenue, total revenue, the envelope, that 12 billion couldn't even service our debt, let alone pay salaries, statutory payments, all those other payments. So we are in difficult situation. So we made a presentation, and they then told us that in the immediate term, if we don't do something, you can't even pay salaries. Because your total revenue cannot even service your debt. That is when this issue of 1 billion came up. But they said it's up to Parliament. We ought to do the scrutiny. They cannot tell us to approve it. The only thing they've observed is that when they look at the interest rate, given the situation that Ghana finds itself, and given the state of the economy, if you go to the capital market, either you won't get the money, or you have to pay very high interest, because interest rates are normally a function of your risk. And then there's an opportunity cost and some other premium that you add. So our risk is so high that if you want to borrow, you normally have to pay a lot. And this one, the all-in cost was about 10.05. So they said that given Ghana's junk situation, that interest rate even appeared to be better. Because if we go elsewhere, it will be worse. But the IMF never pleaded with us that approved that loan. But their point is that, look, there's nothing this government can do, because they can't even get the money. Of course, we've met over it, and we've raised serious issues. So on Thursday when we met, we couldn't approve it, because we had serious issues with the way it's been structured and some of the terms. And something that I've observed is that all the monies that Ken Oforiatta is borrowing now for this government, both interest and amortization, they are pushing everything to 2025. So you see that this year amortization is 7 billion, next year 9 billion, 2024 11 billion. So you see 2 billion increment. 2025 is about 22 billion. So there's 11 billion quantum leap. When, if you look at the trajectory, it's 2 billion, 2 billion. Because all the money he's borrowing, he's deferring both interest and the principal. And it's the same with this. So some of us are insisting that we must establish a sinking fund, like Setekwe did. So you keep something there when your debts are maturing. Even that buffer alone gives investors a certain assurance. And then you can get very good terms, either to refinance and all that. So that is what happened with the IMF. We also raised the issue of some off-balance sheet debt. So if you look at the budget proper, if you look at the revenue side, you would see, for instance, let me just give you one example. You would see something like ESLA revenue. ESLA revenues comes at about 4 billion, but it's just a pass-through. It ends up with ESLA PLC. So you are seeing the revenue that is going into expenditure somewhere, and government has insisted that that energy sector debt is not government debt. So all they did was to form a small company called ESLA PLC and say that ESLA PLC handled the debts. Even though it's a state that is paying, they've decided that it's not national debt. Get Fund, all of us know that Get Fund revenues are for the state because it's a tax. So they've gone to borrow 2.4 billion on the back of Get Fund and collateralize Get Fund. And yet they've decided that that 2.4 billion is not our national debt. Sinohydro, they borrowed 2 billion, told us it's better, and that they'll build an aluminium refinery in 3 years. This is the 3rd year. We met the entity responsible for that, GIADEC. They haven't made even 1% progress. Next year, the facility is due. And in that agreement, if you look at the agreement between us and Sinohydro, it is stated black and white that we expect to pay that facility from proceeds from bauxite that we process. But in the event that we are not able to process that bauxite, the state will pay. So it is crystallizing. And so we raise all this, and the IMF indicated that they have already captured all that, and they're adding that to our national debt. That is where Kwesi then says that our national debt is now hitting 97% as a percentage of GDP. So if you sell the whole Ghana, and you're going to pay your debt, including you and I, all of us, because the GDP has to do with all of us, our total value, it will just pay our debt and nothing will be left. That is the state of the Ghanaian economy. That is where we are. Inflation is at 30%. And in the inflation, there's headline inflation and there's core inflation. The core inflation accounts for energy and food prices. In the inflation basket, the food prices is the biggest because it's a weighted average. And when your food basket is so expensive, it means that people are suffering. Because if you can't do anything, at least as for what the man will eat to sleep, you should be able to deal with that. That is the state of the economy. Petrol prices, petroleum products have increased by more than 100% in less than 6 months. The cedi is at an all-time low. The depreciation of the cedi is so worse if you take all the West African countries and even Africa as a whole. So we are in very, very, very difficult moments. And yet I hear the MPP members speak as if going to an IMF is some fanfare, is some strategic decision. Because when you go for an IMF program, something must give in. That's a fact. Because if everything was well, if we could manage everything, we won't go to an IMF program. I've also heard them indicate that 100 countries have gone to an IMF program. It's not true. What happened is that following COVID, the IMF did what they call an RCF, Rapid Credit Facility. Said it's difficult to raise capital. So based on your quota, and the IMF is based on quota, based on your quota, and based on your needs assessment, we are given some amount. You don't normally go through the regular process. Ghana had 1 billion. In less than 1 month, we assessed that 1 billion and spent it. We went for that 1 billion on 27th of April 2020. It's now that other countries are assessing their 1 billion. So if other countries are assessing their, it's not even 1, we could divide this 600, others the 300. We did 1 billion and we finished ours. That is not a bailout. What we have done is that we finished the 1 billion. We don't have anything left. And we are now going for debt restructuring. So these are very, very, very difficult times for us. Look, currently, students are being fed with less than 1 cedi. And yet we call that hot meal. If you buy 1 egg, it's 1 cedi. Almost all the senior highs are closing down because there's just no food. So it tells you the enormity of the situation. And so what we would have expected is that the head of the economic management team, particularly Dr. Baumia, would build consensus, would try and bring everybody on board. So we are in difficult moments. How can we all help take Ghana out of this quagmire? Rather, he chose to organize some program and heaped all the blames on his predecessors. He claims that Mahama caused the problem, COVID caused the problem, Ukraine caused the problem. As for the MPP, they are innocent. And if you look at the records, by end 2019, even before COVID, we were heading for disaster. The cedi depreciated by almost 16% against the pound. The cedi depreciated by about 13% against the US dollar. Debt to GDP had moved from 53 to around 68. If you look at our tax revenue, we could only pay debt servicing. So this issue of COVID, yes, COVID has an impact. No doubt about that. But what COVID only did or has done is to expose the weak fundamentals of the economy. In fact, when we borrowed 3 billion as a country from Eurobond, 2.4 billion cedis of that amount was used to finance free SHS. So it looks good, but then the following year you start paying the interest. Where are you going to get that money? We borrow to build the Ghana airport. The international airport, we borrow to build it, we borrow to build our Tuabu. So you borrow to invest in infrastructure. So that infrastructure will generate some revenue. You can repay the facility and use some for investment into free SHS or whatever you choose. This government has gotten 24 billion from energy sector levies. They've gotten close to 30 billion from petroleum revenues. Eurobond. So far, President Mahama borrowed 3.7 billion. Akufo-Addo has borrowed over 11 billion. That's about 4 times what President Mahama borrowed. So all of a sudden, the reality is hitting us. And the truth is that we've not built enough buffers and shocks in order to withstand the headwinds. So your currency is depreciating at an alarming rate. And I buy Baumia's assertion. See, when COVID affects countries, it's all countries. And the currency is simply, I go to buy from Kwesi Prato, I buy from you, you buy from me. If I'm demanding so much from you, my currency would fall. So the currency is a major determinant in terms of how your economy is doing. Because COVID cannot choose only Ghana, single out Ghana, and attack Ghana's currency. If COVID is affecting all countries, then all of us, our currencies ought to be operating at par. Inflation rate, Nigeria is better, Uganda is better, Kenya is better. I'm mentioning these countries that are not even francophone countries. They are all doing better than Ghana. So there's a problem with the Ghanaian economy. And I think that this government should sit up and do what is right and proper. I.e., look at the expenditure side. Because if the revenues are not coming, you ought to be looking at the expenditure side. Because when you look at the budget, we are way off gear. We are just completely off. Because we estimate that we'll spend about 137 billion. We estimate that we'll get 100 billion in terms of revenue. The revenues are doing about 20% less. And yet, because of the fall in the cedi, your dollar-denominated component or foreign-denominated component of your debt would go up by that rate of depreciation of the cedi. So we have a major problem on hand. And my fear is that if we do not do something immediately, looking at the fact that based on our information, our reserves are just 2 weeks. Around September, we're going to have fuel shortages. We wouldn't even have the domestic currency to buy fuel. And somewhere in January, February, if we don't watch it, we're going to have food crisis. Because I get a lot of calls from my constituents. They can't get fertilizer. They can't get farm inputs. Things are not moving well. And this is the time. Because in our system, it's rainfall or rain-fed dependent. So within a certain window, if you don't apply fertilizer, if you don't get the necessary weedicides and farm inputs, you are off gear. So we are heading for serious trouble. And I think that as a country, we ought to prioritize. That is what we ought to do as a country. And in prioritizing, food security should be number one. The Minister of Agriculture is so busy with his campaign, he's virtually lost track. And even when reality is hitting, and we are faced with the reality, he's in a state of denial. If the person responsible for agriculture is in a state of denial, he doesn't even appreciate the problem that we are facing, how do you resolve it? Because you must first have an appreciation of the problem, the enormity of the problem, so that you can then plan and deal with it. But he's refusing to even accept that we have a food situation, we have a crisis on hand, and something ought to be done about it. So we are heading for real trouble as a country, and all of us must begin to speak the truth. We kept talking about free SHS. If you talk, they victimize you. If head teachers talk, they victimize them. Today, the parents are talking. Yesterday, I was monitoring the media, and parents are very upset and very angry. And yet, government is in a state of denial. This government doesn't even want to concede that things are not going well and that we are in real trouble. You just have to go and look at the Bank of Ghana's report. If your reserves have declined from 4 months to 2 months, it's a big situation. Because the reserves provide you with the buffers. So what it means is that we are now just borrowing to spend on virtually everything we need. Virtually everything. We just have to borrow. And you can't borrow yourself out of this problem. Normally when you find yourself in a hole, the first thing you do is to stop digging before you think of. But our finance minister and the managers, somewhat, I don't know how they learn their economics. They believe that the solution is to borrow and spend, borrow and spend. And even when you borrow and you don't spend on the critical sectors, because I have a chart where you see that under President Mahama, capital expenditure as a percentage of our total expenditure. On the average is about 12%. For Akufo-Addo, on the average is about 3%. And when you don't spend on capital expenditure, and when we talk of capital expenditure, we're talking of roads, we're talking of infrastructure, health, and all those things, you do not anchor the base of the economy. So the slightest headwind that you face, you are thrown off gear. And that is where we find ourselves today. So going into an IMF program, all of us must prepare for some difficult moments. The IMF is not for the Christmas. What the IMF would do is to tick the box. And normally the IMF's first priority is stability in terms of your fiscal and monetary framework. So their first concern will be debt servicing, i.e. interest payment and amortization. After that, you want to pay wages. Today the wage bill is over 40 billion. Our debt situation is about 44 billion. So those two items takes all the revenue. Statutory payments, you are compelled, because this Assembly Common Fund and now all the others you have to pay. So how do you deal with the situation? It's really, really, really tough. And when you look at the figures and you crunch the numbers, I'm telling you that all of us have to brace up for very, very, very difficult moments going into the next budget cycle.
Thank you very much. Whilst you were talking, I recall that one of the trending stories this morning is IMF team, actually was yesterday when the story started making. IMF team OK's free SHS calls it innovative. And I'm reading from one of the popular websites. The team from the International Monetary Fund described the free senior high school program as innovative and needs to be protected. The team on Wednesday, July 13, concluded this initial visit to Ghana after the country requested a financial bailout. The team, which arrived in Ghana on Tuesday, July 5th, and began work the day after, gathered data from meetings with several key stakeholders, including Vice President Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia, in an effort to ascertain what the country can qualify for. Says among the concerns since President Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, but I just want to, but IMF team has assured the government that the program will rather ensure efficiency and sustainability, that is the free SHS, of the flagship education policy. We are still at an early stage in the discussions, but we believe that the free senior high school is an innovative policy that needs to be protected. The fund stated in its frequently asked questions after the conclusion of the team's visit on Wednesday. So,
you see, what the IMF team is doing now is gathering the data. They haven't even finished gathering the data. They've taken all the information, they will go and process it. Even before they leave Ghana, they've concluded that we are hugely debt distressed. Just on the surface of the data available, they've concluded that Ghana is debt distress and that our situation has worsened. So no doubt. Like I said, the IMF is a very diplomatic institution. In fact, they are now even going to sit to analyze. These are just technical boys who are here. When they go, they're going to analyze all the issues before they go to the board. They don't take decisions. Those who came here, they don't take decisions. They have their superiors. Even their superiors can only make recommendations. It is the board that will take the final decision as to whether to even allow Ghana into that program or not. Okay. How the program shape and form, we do not know. So I think people should be cautious the way we raise hopes. And I'm very, very particular about the way this government is communicating this whole IMF bailout. They make it look as if you just go into an IMF program, you go with your own program, and they just accept it. That is not true. It's based on your revenue available and how you want to spend it. And they will surely give you a cap. Because looking at your health, in terms of your financial health, the IMF might say that you can't borrow more than, say, $300 million. These are your revenues. These are the priorities. Tell us which ones you would cut. Because you must cut. So if you want free SHS, fine. But something must give in. Because you can't have your cake, you can't eat your cake and have it at the same time.
Okay, Honorable. Let me acknowledge that we are currently live on Shine FM in Akate on 96.9, Hills FM in Adaklu 91.7, University Radio in Ketekrachi on 89.7, Sela Radio Dabala 97.1, Diamond FM in Tamale is on 93.7, Bawa Radio Yendi 106.5, Radio Kitawan Saboba 95.7, Benya FM Elmina 105.7, Global FM 105.1 in Ho, Volta 1 TV, Zeps FM on 95.9 in Zebila, and True FM 92.5 in Adeso. Let me read a few of the messages that I'm getting on Facebook. Samuel Ama says, honestly, the NDC and MPP are far apart. In fact, the distance cannot be quantified in terms of standard units. Their dishonesty cannot be equaled. Samuel Asar is also joining us. NDC, he said the NDC hid behind Arise Ghana during their demonstration. Their weakness is making MPP to commit several errors. NDC can't bite, only backs. They have started backing at the EC and they can't bite. General Mosquito show backup. Is he tired? That is Abdul Salam Rufai is also joining us. Senna, MPP as usual won't nominate deserved people, but rather those who pay more will get the nod. Nanado and Baumia can't take credit for Ghana card and also blame COVID. Nasir Mohammed is joining us. As someone said, let's not waste time on them and who they elect. Ghana is hard and getting harder, and they are never ready to take responsibility. Some even will not take responsibility for impregnating their own wives. Suleimana Abdurrahim says credit should be given to His Excellency President Mahama for playing a key role in the implementation of a single spine salary structure, which brought massive change in the salaries of Ghanaian workers. Kobla says they can bring whoever they want. 2024. Prince Dosu is also joining us. Says a good morning. MPP and his national conference, we care less about it because they are just changing. An alcohol from an old bottle to a new bottle, but the alcohol is still the same. Robert Atta says in our MPP national delegates elections, it is the highest bidder who will win the race. Monocracy will be the order of the day. There is Shama Abab in Benya who says very rarely Akufo-Addo and his team lost the object, period. My compliments. Okay, thank you. Johnny Kujo is also joining us. I'm very surprised that Doc could have the guts to stand before Ghanaians and say that the former regime also contributed to their failure. This is the mark of a failure. Dr. Baumia is the most incompetent vice president Ghana has ever had during the Fourth Republic. Those who are at the function clapping for him doing are equally insensitive to Ghanaians. There's Bedu Kwame who says, my concern is about setting a good example to politics in Ghana by impeaching this government and taking hold of any illegitimate properties. Imoro Mustafa says, I think regarding the issue with the EC and the Ghana card registration, our party, the NDC leadership, should sit up and fight for the right to be. Okay, I just lost it. But before I come to you, Gabi, I think Kojechu Mbwafu sent me a message to read to Honorable John Jinapo, and this is what he says. Senna, tell John Jinapo that he shouldn't worry about the economic situation. This too shall pass. My family is in control. Gabriela.
Let me commend my brother John here for a brilliant submission. In fact, he took the wind out of my sail, because anything I say in addition will just be repetition. But you said, when you were reading the statement on the IMF, let me repeat real quick something that you said that I wrote down. You said, Ghana is facing a challenging economic and social situation. The fiscal and debt situation has worsened following COVID-19, which means that there was actually a fiscal and debt situation prior to COVID. This government, since they took over in 2017, and they were enjoying the largesse of the investments of the NDC, after mismanaging the economy, took an attitude of nonchalance and being totally not responsible for the creation and mismanagement of this economy that they have supervised. In 2016, if you remember, Vice President Baumia went to National Theatre to give a lecture on an economy that is built on the foundations of straw. And that the NDC, instead of building a foundation on concrete, had built an economic foundation on straw. Why? Because at the time, our debt to GDP ratio was just under 60%. It was actually 56%. At that time, the country's debt, we had 39 billion in debt. 5 years of being in office with he as chairman of economic management, sitting there every day touting digitization and not focusing on the actual economy. He is sitting on a public debt of 391 billion. He didn't even double it by 50 or 100% too. What is the difference between 39 billion and 391 billion? See the astronomical increase. And at that time, with 39 billion, we had built an economy on straw. Today, because of fiscal mismanagement, indiscipline, corruption, abuse of office, Ethiopia attitude, this country's debt to GDP profile as at the end of the year was 81.9%. At the time we went to HIPIC, we were about 83%. We are 2 points away from paper. In fact, I've heard that civil society have started a campaign to plead for debt relief for Ghana. Please, no multinational, no bilateral agency should give this country debt relief under the presidency of Akufo-Addo and Bawumia. Whatever monies they get, they'll chop all the money. They'll not put it in any productive enterprise, and this country will sink them more. They should repay every debt this country owes. John mentioned, currently, debt, interest rate and amortization alone is taking over 70% of our revenues.
In fact, if you look at January, February, March, it's over 100%. Yes. This year. If you look at January, February, and March,
now who
it's over 100%.
Ken Oforiatta and Osafo Mafo, who since last year refused to take this country to the IMF and to seek support for this country when this country was ailing under their mismanagement. Those two individuals held 30 million Ghanaians, the destiny of 30 million Ghanaians to ransom because of their pride to go to the IMF. And you were reeling under debt. Interest payment and amortization alone. In 2017, when they came to office, all the escrows that had been created to raise funds to support the economy, you came with your capping policy. The monies that you took out, only God knows what you did with the monies. You are here complaining about energy sector debt.
Yeah, I'll deal with that later.
In 2015, when they created ESLA, that time I think he was deputy, and Honorable Tekpe had taken over as acting minister for power. And they arranged with financial institutions who VRA was indebted to that we are going to take 50% of ESLA proceeds to restructure the debt profile of VRA and to strengthen the books of VRA. And that's exactly what they did. Credit to Honorable Tekpe and Honorable Jinapo and their team. You came, what did you do to ESLA? Another capping plus ESLA PLC, issuing of bonds, because that is the only thing you people know in this economy. How to just secure bond, because Data Bank will get their 1% commission. And whilst we are reeling in debt, Ken Oforiatta and his companies are rather living in wealth. For every debt we accumulate, they increase their personal wealth. What kind of human beings are these? What kind of human beings are these? Your whole mindset, your whole, I mean, Senator, this moment we are talking about this topic we are coming to discuss. If I don't go to lamentation, if I joke, I maybe end up crying on set, because I'm so emotional about the whole setup. Get fund in arrears because you went for capping, then bonding, ESLA issues, NHIL problem. Every fund that was created to support the foundations that we had built on concrete, that you claim was straw. You came and you've decommissioned them, you've made them irrelevant, you've put them into debt, you've saddled the nation in further debt, and then you sit and you say we should clap for you. Today you have gathered, you have prepared yourself for your delegates so that you can determine who become presidential candidates in 2024 for NPP. As for Bawumia, he shouldn't even dream of going to contest for presidential primaries. He shouldn't even attempt to show his face there. Because right now, that man has lost all credibility. Anytime he opens his mouth, they put paper in front of him and they'll make so much noise, he's coming to give a speech. You listen to the speech and the whole thing is nothing but jokes and lack of seriousness. He goes and stands at the podium 2-3 days ago. No, it was even yesterday. Compared to 1,000 interchanges, he chose a Ghana card over 1,000 interchanges. Kwame Nkrumah interchange alone has saved this economy $100 million per annum. You know why? Because the 3 productive hours that the average Ghanaian was spending locked in that gridlock has been eased. So people no longer waste their time, risk their health, sitting in bumper-to-bumper traffic, inhaling exhaust fumes. They can now apply themselves to more productive work. But you are willing, because of a Ghana card, that now that you have linked to SIM cards and bank accounts, you can see how much money is in people's accounts. So you can go and tell GRA to go and tax them. So that is of more importance to you than the 1,000 interchanges that eases the lives of the Ghanaian. We are reeling under an inflation of 27%, which I'm very sure is underreported. Heavily underreported. And we have no solutions to those challenges. You are sitting in an economy that is heavily driven by diesel. All haulage trucks in this country are running on diesel. All commercial buses are running on diesel. The tankers that are moving the diesel product, are themselves diesel. The vehicles that are hauling the produce from the north and the hinterlands to the center of Accra and the other regions is running on diesel. And yet you question why you have an inflation of 27% and there's rising cost of food in the country. Is it rocket science to realize that the cost of fuel, which is now 15 cedis a litre, is what is driving the prices of food? And the average Ghanaian is now having to pay more in transport fares, having to pay more in food cost. Is rocket science? Chief Economist Baumia and his finance team. Is rocket science? Is this rocket science? Even me with my 2x4 economics degree, I know this is not rocket science. And PhD holders. See how the masses are struggling. See how people's disposable income has been reduced. You go and talk, right? If Mojid was sitting here, I'm sure he would have told you. And the American economy is struggling. And the German economy is struggling. And the British economy is struggling. They would have told you everybody is struggling. So if we are also struggling, it is not strange that we also be struggling. But what they refuse to tell you is that their government spend their time thinking how to solve the plight of their citizens. The U.S. government, in response to rising fuel cost, release over 1 million barrels in strategic reserves per day to drive down prices. Where is our strategic reserve? Do we have strategic reserve?
No, we don't.
You see?
We're supposed to have 12 weeks. We don't.
We don't even have. So what will they even release to us? Nothing. In fact, now in Ghana, we have absolutely nothing. Akufo-Addo and his people have raped this country to the extent that Ghana is now a weak nation. Whilst they laugh and enjoy in the ecstasy and the showmanship they've created for themselves. Can you imagine? Can you imagine? Politicians of this caliber. If my generation has to look up to this generation and think that this generation has served this nation well, then I'll quit politics and find something else to do with myself. Because if this is the standard of what politics ought to be, then what we have in this country is not politics at all. And I don't even know what it is, because this is not how you govern a nation, and this is not how you think about the welfare of a people. It is not showmanship. It is not coming to excite and extract the wealth of a nation for yourself and your appendages, and then go and sit at Accra Stadium and giggle and laugh whilst your people are being impoverished day in and day out, and you have no solutions except to go and take paper and come and tell me Ghana card is more important than 1,000 interchanges. Tell that man he shouldn't attempt a presidential campaign. The monies they've paid to delegates to prepare the grounds for him to come 2024. So now let me end it here because I'm getting too emotional. Let me getting angry.
Thank you. I was just cross-checking the inflation rate whilst we were talking. Actually, it's 29.8.
Yeah, 29.8. Yes. Almost 30.
It's 29.
That's the official.
That's the official.
That's the official.
This is Musa Abatwa from Asawase. Sana, I'll be very disappointed if by 2027 some people in government today have been held accountable and probably prosecuted. They are deliberately squandering taxpayer money with impunity. No wonder they are monetizing our political system. We are seeing gargantuan sharing of money to delegates in their ongoing delegates conference. I hope and pray IMF is watching. I leave you with this quote. Ghana card is worthy of benefit than building thousands of interchanges across the country. That's Musa Abatwa. Then Charles Cardinal says, good morning. Please, one egg costs 150 pesos. Why? And not 1 cedi. Sana, tell us exactly what they... Okay. All right. Thank you. Koblavi in Pokwasi, Benghazi says, where is Kojo Ponkruma and Uforiata? They are now ministers of IMF because they can convince IMF officials to give Ghana financial bailout after bragging that they are capable of managing Ghana. Now Dr. Baumia can't brag again. No more Waterloo economic lectures. We are not ready to listen to any cock and bull story. They have already destroyed Ghana and the lives of Ghanaians. They have enriched themselves through corruption, so they are not feeling the hardship. They must leave us alone. Charles Nyamina Samakese is also joining us. So John Mahama was indeed a magician. As a president, he did a lot for Ghanaian with little. He did a lot for Ghana with little, as compared to what's happening today. For his vision, hard work, honesty, and sense of love and passion for his country, he must come back to lead. Good morning. Good morning to you too, Charles Nyami. Akwesi Kisi Ngomo says, what has the Ghana card provided for Ghanaians and Ghana as a whole? Ghanaians are still hungry, unemployment is high, poor road network, inflation all-time high, 29%. Ghana's debt has not been paid, corruption everywhere, etc. And Vice President is talking as if the Ghana card is a matter of development and prosperity. Ghanaians should stop giving Dr. Baumia attention. There is Abbas and Mogobo, you know, think so. Who says Dr. Baumia must keep quiet and bow down his head in shame. He lied from the time of campaigning to become a vice president till now. He is still lying. Shame unto him. We are tired of him. Regards to Mr. Jinapo and Mr. Pratt. This is from Alhaji Hadi in Pig Farm. Said Dr. Baumia has nothing to offer Ghanaians after all these years in office as an economic leader in your administration. You are still blaming someone for the reason of the economic hardship we are experiencing. Dr. Baumia is speaking as if he is addressing KG school children. This man called Baumia is not serious, and he doesn't respect the good people of Ghana. When the gods want to destroy a man, they will first make him mad before the real destruction. And let me end with, okay, Kojo Chumbwa for his back again. Says, Sena, good morning. My sister Gabi knows that Akufo-Addo sold all his family heirlooms to finance his presidential campaign and asked Ghanaians to submit, which we did. Gabi, this too shall pass. Grab your Ghana card and rush to the nearest total fuel station. Fill your tank with fuel, present your Ghana card and tell them Baumia sent you. Well, I move to Mr. Pratt.
Well, I'm worried about the crisis, the social and economic crisis into which this country has been plunged. But I'm more worried about the quality of discussion and debate about the way forward. Because it seems to me that many of the people on all sides of the debate and the discussion do not understand the nature of the crisis this country is facing. You know, this week, JP Morgan, the US bank, did an analysis and came to the conclusion that by the end of this year, if the Russia-Ukraine war continues, Russia is likely to take measures which would push the price of a barrel of petrol from its current $100 per barrel to $400. This is a very significant analysis. Okay, forget all the other indicators. If today we claim that the global economy is in this difficulty because we are buying crude at $100, Just imagine 5 months from now, if the JP Morgan analysis is correct, if we have to buy it at 400, what is likely to happen? How would the IMF or any other institution deal with this crisis? You know, last week, something also happened. Last week, the dollar and the euro exchanged at 1-to-1. Have you read the analysis? The analysis simply is that the energy crisis in Europe is driving down the value of the euro. You understand what I mean? And the energy crisis, we haven't gotten anywhere yet. According to JP Morgan, we haven't gotten anywhere at all. So even those who do this analysis, who use the Ukraine-Russian war as a basis of the analysis, must begin to revise their notes. I don't accept that the Ukraine-Russian crisis or war is responsible for the current mayhem in our economy and on the international plane. I don't accept it, and I'll explain. Okay? Now, Senna, what problem are we trying to solve? What problem are we trying to solve? Whether we go to the IMF or we don't go to the IMF, whatever we do, what is the problem that we are trying to solve? One, if you read the recent report released by IFS, the IFS is claiming that we need 128% of total national revenue for debt servicing and for the payment of public sector emoluments. This is the IFS. So far, I haven't heard anybody contest the figures released by the IFS. Okay? Now, if this is the situation, what does it mean? It means that if you put all the resources that we generate, if you put all the wealth that we generate, the exploitation of our gold resources, exploitation of our diamond resources, exploitation of our oil and gas resources, the wealth that is created by Ghanaian labor and so on, the tax revenue, the royalties and so on, if you put all of that together, it is still not sufficient to cater for our needs. In fact, the situation is so bad that if we don't borrow, we cannot pay public sector workers. The situation is so bad that after paying our debts and interest and paying public sector workers, we don't have money to construct gutters. We can't build schools. We cannot extend social infrastructure, which includes housing, health, and so on. Maybe I'm talking about big things. What it simply means is that if tomorrow our neighbor, the president of Togo, decides to pay us a visit, we cannot provide him lunch without borrowing. That is how bad this situation is. Now, this situation itself is a reflection of something else. The structure of the economy comes up. What are we getting out of what we produce? What are we getting out of what we produce? If you take mining, just take mining. If you take mining alone, we have entered into agreements with the mining companies, which allows them in some instances to keep 98% of the total value of gold that they extract and send outside this economy. And I'm making reference to the foreign exchange retention agreements that we have signed. Now, why would you not have this kind of problem when you sign such obnoxious agreements? When you commit us to these absolutely senseless agreements and so on? Why would you not find yourself in this bind? We need to be asking ourselves, if you look, for example, at mobile telephony, how much are we getting out of mobile telephony? What is the Ghanaian interest in the mobile telephone sector? What is the Ghanaian interest there? And all of us agree that the mobile telephone sector really has a potential for generating huge amounts of money. That's not Ghanaian interest there. You understand? Look at oil and gas. What is our interest there? How much we get out of the oil and gas that we produce? And you can do that practically for every sector of the national economy. So, we have built an economy whose primary purpose is to expand the wallets of so-called investors sitting in the metropolitan capitals, the colonial metropolis. That's the economy we have built. So all that is happening is a consequence of the pursuit of the neoliberal policy. What is happening is a systems collapse. It's a systems collapse completely. Now, somebody should tell me how going to the IMF will bring down the price of kinky from 3 cedis to the 1 cedi that it originally was. No magic, nothing would enable the IMF to assist us to bring down the price of kinky from 3 cedis to 1 cedi. It ain't gonna happen. The price of maize has gone up by 400% in the last couple of years. How will going to the IMF deal with that problem? Nobody can convince me that going to the IMF will deal with that problem. You have escalating petroleum prices. How will going to the IMF deal with that problem? IMF has no solution to that problem. If you go to a second cycle schools, currently, the schools are in distress. One of the reasons why they are in distress is that we are unable to feed them. There's no money to pay for the feeding and so on. How will going to the IMF solve that problem? No way. There's no measure the IMF can introduce, or the IMF itself was not intended to solve these problems. Take workers, both in the private and public sector. What is their problem? Some workers are earning, their total earnings are not enough to take them from their homes to the office and back. How does going to the IMF resolve this problem? It doesn't. You see, we need to pay some attention to the establishment of the IMF and the World Bank after World War II. What were these institutions established to do? These institutions primarily were established to produce some stability in the Western financial arrangement. You understand? These institutions were established to enable countries to manage their debt and so on, so as to not to drag the whole Western international system into crisis. That was the sole purpose of establishing both the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund. And if you doubt me, ask yourself a few questions. If all the debts that Ghana owed were owned to Chinese institutions, would you get assistance from the IMF to go and pay your debts owed to Chinese institutions? If our debts were owed to Russia, would you get assistance from the IMF to go and pay your debts? Certainly not. Certainly not. The World Bank and the IMF are part of an international racket aimed primarily at ensuring that we pay our debts, that Western financial institutions do not get into crisis. The IMF and the World Bank are not here or do not exist to make sure that we build a social system which enables our people to be educated from the cradle to the grave. You understand? That is not their business. They've never been interested in that business. The IMF and the World Bank are not here to ensure that we have good roads. It's not their business. When they talk about policy credibility, what are they talking about? When they talk about policy credibility, simply what they are meaning is that they want to send a signal onto the international financial system that we are credit worthy. That if you borrow, you can pay. That if people carry their monies to you, your economy is in such a state as to be able to absorb that money and to pay it back, and so on. Now, we have a long history, it's not just Ghana, all of us, third world countries and so on, have a long history of association with the IMF and the World Bank. And I want to go back to 1982, 1983. What happened to us? We were in a similar situation. The situation was not as grave as it is today, but we're in a similar situation. And we rushed to these Bretton Woods institutions. What did they tell us? They came here, they looked at our financial situation and so on, and said, look, you are employing too many workers. You are keeping too many workers on the payroll. And if you keep all of these workers on the payroll, you cannot set aside enough money to service your debt and to retire your debt. So immediately, begin a program of retrenchment of labor. In 1 year, 300,000 workers lost their jobs in the public and civil sector. That's the civil service and the public service. 300,000 workers lost their jobs. 2 days ago, I was talking to the General Secretary of the Public Workers Services Union, the chairperson of the Public Services Workers Union. And he told me that in the cocoa sector alone, out of a total employees of about 100,000, 90,000 lost their jobs in 1982-83. They came to us and they told us that this is your import substitution program, it won't work. It won't work because if you carry on with your import substitution program, you will not be able to pay your debts to all these financiers sitting in the Western capitals and so on. So sell off your state enterprises. And we began selling them. Black Star Line, we sold. State Fishing Corporation, we sold. We continued selling. Many of the divisions of GIHOC were sold and so on. Now, Senna, how many years from 1982 till now? Look around. All of the enterprises we sold, how many of them survived and are still working? Today, I can only count 2. There may be more, but I can count only 2. Movenpick Ambassador Hotel and Golden Tulip Hotel. They're the ones that survived. You understand? Now, why did we get into this quagmire of self-destruction? Because we're heavily indebted. And because we went to the IMF and the World Bank to help us pay our loans to the so-called creditors sitting in the colonial metropolis and so on. That was not all. They looked us in the face and said, this money you are spending on healthcare, if you continue to spend this amount of money on healthcare, you will not be able to pay your creditors. So cut your spending on the social sector. So we began cutting spending on social sector. One of the results of that reckless decision was that we ended up with the cash and carry system. If you remember, And the cash and carry system has such a major devastating impact on the lives of our people. We came to a point where if you were involved in an accident, if you had an accident and one leg was cut, 2 arms were cut, you were bleeding in your head and so on, and you were rushed to the emergency unit of any hospital, nobody would look at you if you didn't have enough money to pay. That was where we got to 1982-83 under the so-called economic recovery program. Now, the managers of the economy themselves realized that what they had gotten into was causing serious headache for our population. So they came back and introduced another program called Program of Action to Mitigate the Social Consequences of Adjustment, PAMSCAD. What did PAMSCAD do? What did PAMSCAD do to us? When PAMSCAD had failed, they then just came back and changed the acronym, and then they began to talk about Structural Adjustment Program Phase 1, and then went to Structural Adjustment Phase 2, and so on. All of that, what did it do to our economy? I recall in 2001, January 2001, when President Kufuor won the elections, the communication he received from the World Bank and the IMF warning him that the economy was in total shambles, and therefore he needed to take radical measures in order to take us out of the woods. Then they came up with this idea of HIPIC, which actually was a reaction to what Fidel Castro had said at the non-aligned movement, at the meeting of the non-aligned movement. Fidel Castro had simply said that these debts were unpayable, and that if African and third world countries were to pay these debts, we will come into the situation in which we are today. And therefore, we should simply just refuse to pay. Of course, all of those discussions led to the establishment of Jubilee 2000, involving people like Akoto Ampao, Jeremy Corbyn, all kinds of people, and so on. So they came up with this contraption called HIPIC. And truly, HIPIC was not different from all the measures we had been introduced to in 1982-83. In fact, HIPIC even had a psychological impact which was so devastating. I mean, imagine our kids going to school and finding on the walls of their schools HIPIC benefit. Imagine people in poor communities going to places of convenience and finding on the walls HIPIC benefit, creating the impression that there are benefits to be derived from being highly indebted and poor and so on. The psychological impact was devastating. We warned at that time that HIPIC will take us nowhere but to desperation and doom. How many years after HIPIC? Look at where we are. Look at where we are today. Now, interestingly, when President Kufuor came into office for 8 years, he was in office for 8 years. At the end of his 8-year term, when President Mills took over, the same institutions which had complained about the National Democratic Congress, 8 years of National Democratic Congress rule, wrote almost identical letters to President Mills, warning him that the economy was in total shambles. You understand? That the economy was in total shambles. The same people, same institutions. So, if you follow this trajectory, it is obvious that this IMF and World Bank will take us nowhere. They would only deepen, our crisis. Now, Senator, the problems we face. Today, one of the problems we face is that we are reliant on imports for food. We are importing fish, we are importing tomatoes, we are importing contomere, you understand? We are importing cassava. I recently heard a statement from the Minister of Agriculture indicating that the cassava we are bringing in is not for consumption, it's not for making fufu and kukunte. It is industrial cassava. What difference does that make? But we are dependent, food imports. If you look at tomatoes, Ghana is the third largest importer of tomato paste from Germany. The whole world, we are number 3. Guinea fowls. Today, we are importing guinea fowls from Denmark. Can you believe this? We are importing guinea fowls from Denmark. Can't believe this. Now, so if this is a problem, if reliance on imports is the problem, what do you do about it? Do you rush to the IMF to go and look for a loan of $1 billion or $2.5 billion or whatever to enable you to pay your debts owned in the USA, in the UK, in Bonn and other places? Or do you begin to think about how you can improve your own methods of agriculture? This country, fortunately, we are bordered on the south by the Atlantic Ocean. Huge one. Huge Atlantic Ocean. Throughout this geography, our land is crisscrossed by all kinds of rivers, Oti, Ofin, name them. Somebody should give me one good reason why we should be importing fish. Why we should be importing fish. So this is the time to think about how to utilize the largest man-made lake in the world. Fortunately, we have the largest man-made lake in the world. How do we use that to grow fish? I mean, I can't believe when I hear that today Ghana is importing tilapia from China. Can you believe it? When you have the largest man-made lake in the world, when the land is crisscrossed by all these rivers and so on, importing tilapia from China, crazy, absolutely crazy. So this is the time to bring our experts in aquaculture and so on and begin to plan on how to grow our own fish, to cut the importation of fish, so that we can cut down on our need for dollars and pounds and euros. Common sense. You don't have to go to the schools that Dr. Bawumia went to be able to apply common sense. Invariably, in fact, those who go to those schools, they end up quarreling with common sense. You understand? So this is common sense. What do we do? Offing, what do we do about offing? What do we do about Ancobra and so on? What do we do with the Atlantic Ocean and so on in order to increase our production of fish? Our agriculture is suffering. It was suffering long before COVID. The prices of fertilizer had gone up almost by 300%. The Minister of Agriculture had been telling us that people were using donkeys to cross the border with our fertilizers. So we knew that problem before COVID. Okay? Now, given the crisis in which we are, where chemical fertilizer is not likely to be available, and even when it's available, it is going to be expensive and so on, what do we do? Simply put on your thinking cap. General Kutu Achampon, soldier man, graduate of Swedro Business College, came to the realization around 1975-76 that the way forward for agriculture is not chemical fertilizer, but organic fertilizer. And he established the Keshinungwa compost plant in order to produce organic fertilizer for agriculture. 1976. Today, that plant has collapsed. Today, I hear some feeble noises about the introduction of organic fertilizer into agriculture and so on. Now, given this crisis, what do we do? Immediately, there ought to be a task force for the massive production of organic fertilizer. There has to be agricultural extension programs aimed at reshaping the thinking of our farmers, the philosophy of farming and so on, to move to organic fertilizer, to change our farming practices and so on. That is a more sensible solution to running to the IMF. That's a more sensible solution to going to lie prostrate before the IMF for $2.5 billion. Why? Since the Akufo-Addo government came into power, it has had more than $2.5 billion. What happened to the money? So it is not the injection of that money which is the solution. If it was the injection of that money which was the solution, Master, we would have solved this problem long ago. The more money we inject, the deeper we get into debt. The more money we get, the deeper we become reliant on external factors beyond our control for developing the national economy. So it's time to put on our thinking caps. My brother, in the early days of the Akufo-Addo government, you remember, I'm sure you will all remember, our friend Osafo Mafo claimed to have traveled to Dubai and came back and told us a very interesting story. What was his story? His story was that he had been told by by the Dubai authorities that Ghana was one of the largest exporters of gold to Dubai. And that in 1 year, we had exported, I think, $5 billion worth of gold. Now, if you check from our records here, we are actually exporting only $2 billion. What accounts for the difference of $3 billion? You need to check that. If you want this economy to move forward, you need to check that. And check, the IMF is not going to check that for you. You understand? The IMF is not going to come to Ghana and tell our leaders that it doesn't make sense to keep 98% of the value of gold you export outside your economy. The IMF is fine with that. But that's a problem for us. And the IMF does not give us solutions to that. So why do you go to them? The IMF is not coming to tell you that instead of chemical fertilizers, use organic fertilizer. It's not their problem. They don't care. They don't give a damn. You can eat feces for all they care. It's not their problem. You understand? So the solution is not in Washington. The solution is here. Now, Senna, when we were struggling for national independence, we were struggling for a number of things. One of the real things that we struggled for, why independence became relevant, was simply the development of our capacity to elect our own leaders. So that you don't have a Gogisberg sitting in Osu, directing affairs. So that you can get an Nkrumah or Buzia if you like, or Atamils if you like, or Kufua if you like, sitting there directing affairs. That was one of the principles why we fought for national independence. Our capacity to elect our own leaders. Okay? Beyond that, we fought for independence so that our resources will be owned by us and will be exploited for the benefit of our people. These are the only reasons why we fought for independence. If there's another one, tell me. 60 years after our success at expelling the colonial usurpers, how much of our resources do we own and control? How much of our resources are exploited for our own benefit? That is why when Nana Akufo-Addo came and was talking about moving away from the Gogisberg economy, I was somehow enthused. We were told that we're going to move away from the Gogisberg economy. And those of us who were enthused, perhaps today realize how naive we were. Because instead of moving away from the Gogisberg economy, we have run straight into Gogisberg and buried ourselves in the bowels of the Gogisberg economy. That's why we are dying. That's why we are suffering. That is why nothing works. That is why drivers cannot make their daily sales. Many drivers are heavily indebted. Why? Because they can't make their daily sales. They are afraid that if they go to the car owners and they don't pay their daily sales, so they'll take the cars from them. So they go and borrow from Shylocks, pay the car owners so that they can continue to drive the cars, even if it means continuing indebtedness. So the time has come for a fundamental restructuring of the national economy. The time has come for the establishment of a new international economic order, which does not make us drawers of water and hewers of wood. This is the time. Anything short of this is just absolute foolishness. Maybe that's too mild. Anything short of this is absolute madness. And I wonder why we think that doing the same thing will give us different results. I think it was Einstein who made the point that doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results is madness. I'm not the one saying it, it's Einstein who said this, that if we continue to do the same things over and over again and we expect different results, we are mad. And indeed we are mad. Maybe not all of us, our leaders. They need to have their heads looked into. Because if you follow Einstein, they are doing the same thing every time. And somehow, they expect different results. Now, say now for me, I mean, one of the most dishonest talk that I have heard is the recent lecture given by His Excellency Alhaji, Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia. And I'll come to the dishonest part. I'll come to that very soon. But before, when we were growing up, amongst us were people who wanted to become great academics. They wanted to wear the titles professor and doctor so much. They burned the midnight candle. They struggled in order to emulate people that we saw as brain powers in our country. Today, I feel so very highly disappointed in academia. I feel so very, very highly disappointed in academia. What happened to academia? And I don't want to repeat what Dr. Percy says about his colleagues. He can say that for himself. I don't want to repeat Dr. Percy's statement about his colleagues in academia. Look, all of these lectures which are being organized by faculties of universities and so on, are you telling me that the heads of faculty, the lecturers and so on, don't know that they only serve propaganda purposes for a political party? Is anybody telling me that? And if you tell me that, it will suggest that the faculty heads and so on, they're dancers. Because I know, everybody can see, that they turn their faculties into propaganda platforms. And that is shocking. That is shocking. Because they are the people we expect to do empirical analysis of our situation and to come forward to us, to the nation, to government, to opposition, to everybody, with suggestions that work. Suggestions that have empirical basis. Now they've all turned themselves into propaganda platforms. My goodness, for goodness sake, I get worried by these developments. But put that aside. We are told that there are 4 reasons why we are in the hole. 4 reasons that we are in the hole. I am so very happy that Honorable John Jinapor is on this platform. And in fact, I'll be happier if you commit to coming onto this platform more. Because I'm going to raise an issue. He's been Deputy Minister for Energy before. You can disagree with me or agree with me, but I like to listen to him. We are told, first reason is that we were hit by a COVID pandemic. Is that true? Again, you are in Parliament, and you've seen the figures. If you look at total government expenditure for the COVID period, not for COVID, the whole government expenditure, including education, everything, and so on.
COVID and COVID related.
No, I'm not even talking about COVID and COVID related. I'm talking about general, the omnibus expenditure of government. Close to 300 billion for the period. According to the finance minister's own figures, the amount of money we spent on COVID and COVID related, what they call COVID and COVID related expenses. No, I will add all the others and make it 19 billion.
No, everything. He's added all the...
I want to be gracious.
Everything.
So how does the expenditure of, even if you like, 20 billion out of 300 billion become such a burden for us? The figures don't justify the claims they are making. The figures. Let us say that for COVID and COVID related expenditure, they spend 20 billion. The total expenditure is about 300 billion. So what is the percentage of that COVID expenditure in relation to the overall expenditure? So the finance minister himself is telling us that when they come to tell to us about COVID being the cause, they are lying. Because the figures he brought do not support that claim. You understand? In fact, the finance minister is telling us that they got so much money for COVID that they were able to make savings of 7 billion from the COVID money that they got. So COVID rather gave us profit. Why are you laughing? So the finance minister tells us that they made profit from COVID. Now, if you made profit from COVID, how does COVID then become a headache for you? I don't understand it. Maybe I'm a dunce. But their own figures do not support the claims that they make. Put the figures aside. We are told that if you look at the whole wide world, Ghana's performance in dealing with COVID was exemplary. They told us. I didn't say it. Now, how was that performance exemplary when COVID became such a big problem for us? Because if you're able to manage COVID well, it means that you're also limiting the impact on the economy. You are limiting the impact on lives and so on. So how did we work so well to limit the impact of COVID, and yet COVID became such a Herculean problem for us? I don't know. Only Dr. Bawumia can explain this. Because I've tried and tried and tried to explain this, and I can't find the explanation. So if he has better particulars, let him come forward with the better particulars on how they could have managed COVID so well, and yet COVID could have had such a devastating impact on us. That is number one. Now, number two, this man looks us in the face. The people of Ghana, he looks us in the face, you know, and I wonder what he sees in our faces. And he tells us that the Russian-Ukrainian war is responsible for our current condition. How is the Russian-Ukrainian war responsible for our current condition? One, because of the increase in oil prices, oil and gas prices, and two, the shortage of fertilizer and increases in the fertilizer price and so on. These are the reasons he gives us. Now, I want to limit myself to oil. Oil. Okay? Sana. They started singing this song of Ukraine-Russian war affecting us less than 2 months after the war broke out. And I checked the spot market prices, and I actually found that the prices were rising. But then I asked myself, who buys oil at spot market price? If we have a government which today is buying its oil at spot market price, we should sack them from office. Who does that? The spot market prices are indicative prices. It's a reference price, it's an indicative prices. Nobody buys at that price. Only idiots can be buying at that price. You understand? So if you use spot market prices to come and tell us stories about how the Ukraine-Russia war is affecting us, that's a problem. In fact, if you look at the price build-up, what do you see? At the bottom, they indicate that the prices they are using are ex-Rotterdam. I'm sure you understand, ex-Rotterdam. That means that all things being equal, the assumption is that we are buying our finished products at Rotterdam prices. Okay? So this whole argument about the rise in prices of crude as a result of Russia-Ukrainian war and so on, pack it aside. It doesn't make any sense at all. In any case, 2 weeks ago, I listened to the energy minister of South Africa saying that as for them, they have decided to buy their oil from Russia because Russia is giving them
better things.
Not better. The Russian oil has been reduced by 25%. The price has been reduced by 25% for anybody who wants to buy. So South Africa is going to buy Russian oil. India is buying Russian oil. China is buying Russian oil. Venezuela is buying Russian oil. Many countries are buying Russian oil because the Russian-Ukrainian war has given them an opportunity to buy oil at a reduction by a quarter of the price. So let us assume that we are even buying on the spot market. We are buying spot market prices. So why are we not buying from Russia? Our government should explain to us why it has become beholden to Joe Biden sitting in the Washington without regards to the interests of the Ghanaian people. They should come and explain to us. So this oil price thing, master, they should pack it aside. Doesn't make sense. Then they look us in the face again. Oh, Charlie. They look us in the face again and you know what they are telling us? That we are suffering because John Jinapo and co, when they were in the office, to be able to fight Dumso, they bought so much energy, electric power, that we have excess, we have exceeded how much we need to meet our needs. And then whether we use that power or not, we have to pay for it. And then they calculate how much we have been paying for it and so on. And then they tell us. And, Senna, when I watched videos of the lecture, my surprise was not at what the vice president said, but the fact that he got applause for this. So the disease is spreading. It is no longer the vice president disease. All those who are clapping for him also have the same symptoms. Me, Massa, I've never studied energy. Common sense. I try to use my common sense a little more. Any system that you have, and John, if I lie, tell me, any system that you have, you need to have reserve capacity.
What's the reserve margin?
You need to have reserve capacity. Because if your system runs into trouble, what are you going to do? And there are many ways in which your system can run into trouble. So there's a certain amount of capacity that you don't need, but which you need to retain in order to provide guarantees for your entire system. Is that a problem for Baumia? And the people who are clapping, is that a problem for them? So what we need to be talking about is whether what we have as the reserve is the right quantity or is not the right quantity. That's what the argument is. It's not about whether you had. In any case, if you want to keep reserve capacity, do you get it for free? That reserve capacity, is it not produced? Is there not a cost of production and so on? How does that become a problem for you? So now tell me, maybe you two, you went to school small. You are not like me who didn't go to school. Maybe people who went to school, and I hear that Gabi too is going to school. You have the area going to school. Giddy, 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 giddy. So those of you who are going to school and who went to school, you know better than those of us who didn't go to school. Is this too difficult to understand? I can't believe this. Then finally, Wednesday, I made a fantastic discovery. Wednesday, I was sitting in a TV studio, Metro TV studios, and then I saw the graphic in front of me. I decided to flip through the graphic. So I read the report in the graphic, which was giving details about the meeting in Peduasi Lodge. And two things were striking. The first thing that struck me was the report that all of these ministers, municipal chief executives and so on, have been taken to Peduasi to be given facts and figures to speak to the issue. We were taken there and taught how to
communicate.
Put it nicely. How to engage in propaganda. One of my friends called it propaganda. Propaganda. Master, no amount of propaganda is going to solve the issues before us. They're real. If you go to the market and you buy Olonka of Gari at the price at which it's being sold, no propaganda can change the price. You understand? If moon die and they pay you, that money, propaganda cannot increase its value. So that was a useless exercise anyway. But that's not the main issue. The main issue was the claim in the report that the Akufo-Addo government has already been to the IMF twice. I said, hey, these are people who were busily telling us that only mad people go to the IMF. They were telling us that if you are not crazy, you don't go to the IMF. At the time they were telling us that crazy people go to the IMF, they were also going there. What kind of people are these? Sana, we went there when we wanted to extend the Mahama administration's 3-year program to 4 years. We went to the IMF. We extended the program by 1 year more. That was going to the IMF.
And then we came to the Kenke party.
And then we went there again to look for reliefs. So we have been there 2 times already.
The second one is the RCF.
RCF, we are right. So the impression that this is the first time we are going to the IMF and the Akufo-Addo is false. It's part of the false narrative. We have been there 2 times already. And we went there and hid it and deceived the people of Ghana that only mad people go to the IMF, but we're running there. And so we've been there twice already. Now, the 2 times we went there, they should show us the results. Today, I'm sitting here, I'm reading the newspapers, and I'm shocked. All the advice which was given to them, to the MPP, 10 years ago, 8 years ago, 7 years ago, which they ignored, they are now putting that same advice out as if it is something new. I'm sure you heard them saying that, oh, this free SHS thing, it has to be rearranged, reviewed, and so on. They were told that. Even 3 years ago, they were told, hey, anybody who talks about review is going to change the program, don't vote for him. You remember? They are talking the same language. Then I heard again from the newspaper somebody coming up with a brilliant suggestion, or what he thought was a brilliant suggestion, that there should be means testing. You remember means testing when it came up? In fact, means testing was put forward by Kenneth Oretta himself. I said he doesn't understand why rich people should have free education for their children. Means testing. What they did to Kenneth Oretta, what they did to him, they tore him to shreds. Now, that thing is coming out. Now they are talking about staggering it. Hey, now, when we have gone in already to this level, now staggering, stagger what? But that's what they're talking about. You understand? Massa, simply put, I saw 1977, 78, 79. I was here. I lived here. I even participated in those struggles. And Senna, I'm not lying to you. When I sit back today and watch the Ghanaian scene, watch the labor front, I see 1978. Everything I'm seeing today is 1978. 1978 eventually led to disastrous consequences for our nation and people. I pray that we don't get there, even though my prayers have never been answered. And I know that what we have to do is not to pray. We have to think and take concrete action to build a self-reliant national economy which is anchored in a continental economy which is free from manipulation by a world order which is tilted in favor of the capitalist, advanced capitalist states. That's what we need to do. You understand? But I'm seeing 1978 and I'm so frightened. I'm seeing 1978. I don't want to see 1979, but 1978 is around us all. And if we do not take the appropriate measures, as we did then, by moving from 1978 to 1979, we may move from 1978 to 1979. And I'm worried about that situation. I'm so very deeply worried about that situation. And as a Ghanaian, I insist on my right to demand from government immediate and sensible action to arrest the deteriorating situation. The situation is deteriorating. It's deteriorating so fast. IMF is not a solution. And we need to start thinking.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Okay, so let me do a few of the messages. This one is coming from, doesn't have name. Says, good morning. I believe our leaders must not feel ashamed to send a team to Tanzania to find out how Magufuli resuscitated that project in his country without assent from the IMF and World Bank. If all of Africa following Magufuli's footsteps, these Bretton Woods institutions will become redundant on our continent. David Sena is also joining us. Sena, does DNA change no matter how hard anyone tries? The MPP and particularly this government came to power through humongous propaganda. They thrive on propaganda will not change. Let them continue lying. God is in control, she says. Alasame Suna is also joining us. And Alasame Suna says the splashing of fiscal cash at the MPP Congress is a clear indication of tough times ahead for us. The IMF delegation must involve all CSOs, stakeholders, and NDC caucus before releasing any funds to government and how the funds must be utilized, and Kenufuyata must not be involved in the transaction. As for Dr. Baumia, his dishonest disgrace a propaganda tool for the MPP and embarrassing to Mother Ghana. Instead of he speaking on how bad the economy is, his focus is rather on Ghana card, when the Ghana card cannot put money in the pockets of Ghanaians. Mystic in Sawam says the incoming deputy communication, so the theoretical Dr. Baumia is a known talkative. So Ghanaians don't need his explanation and education on the IMF bailout to know that he, Dr. Baumia, and his government has lost credibility, mismanaged the economy, have failed woefully, and the center cannot hold. PAC Anto is joining us. Let my brother Kwesi know that the problem is not dealing with the direction of our socio-economic development, but how to deal with those who deliberately use our resources for personal gain through the ballot box. There's a Kojo Chumbuafo again. This is not Kojo. First, before this is Dennis Akwete. I am tired with this IMF staff, as we all know that until Mother Ghana take commanding height to gain substantially from its God-given resources, we are going nowhere. And both the NDC and MPP are guilty of not taking critical decisions for this to be achieved. But there's one thing I want Honorable John Jinapor to clarify for me. It has been alleged that the finance minister and his deputies' companies have been benefiting from all Euro bonds or borrowing, and same had been argued to constitute conflict of interest for our loss. But the opposition party makes any attempt so far to test that in court. of law when it has the means to do? Why? Okay, I think has not. Okay, I think the finance minister is a huge problem for Ghana, and the opposition needs to test this in court before more damage is caused to Mother Ghana for the sake of posterity. Okay, now I come to Kojo Chumbafo, who says, please ask Uncle Kwesi whether the Greek minister is quarreling with common sense. He is a Cambridge University PhD holder in agriculture. That is okay.
Yes, something on the capacity charges.
Okay.
When you
okay, so then you'd have to also maybe spend some time and deal with the issue of the food shortageness.
Yeah. Let me just, because some of our people listen, and Kwesi tried to touch on this issue of so-called 17 billion payment on what the Vice President described as excess capacity arising from take or pay agreements. Now, in the energy sector, there are some things you ought to understand. Energy sector projects are capital intensive, very, very expensive. They have a long gestation period. So it takes time before you deliver a project, sometimes minimum 3 years. And then they have a long tenure. Hardly will you have an energy project that would not span beyond 5, 10, 20 years. So that is how it is. Now, when we talk of capacity, it's simply ability to do something. So if Kwesi Pratt can lift this, that is capacity. So if he has more strength than he can raise this, then you call that excess capacity. So in the energy sector, nobody plants, say, 100 megawatts against total consumption of 100 megawatts. It's not done anywhere. Say Ghana consumes 100 megawatts, so you put only 100 megawatts. So for instance, if you were to take Akosombo, it's 1,020 megawatts. Let's assume Ghana's consumption is 1,000, and you bring Akosombo 1,020. Anytime the dam goes down a little, you have to lower it, so you can't generate that 1,000. That's why he says that you need what you call a reserve margin. And the Energy Commission itself says that you require 20% reserve margin over and above your peak demand. Or another plant that is equivalent to your largest plant. Because when your largest plant goes down, something must come in. Fortunately, we've done 5 years under the MPP. So we are no more talking of projections. We are talking of outturns. And outturns are not projections, so they are facts and figures. I have in my document here, this is cost of distribution. This is from ECG. They submitted to the Mines and Energy. So you see, this is sales revenue. So for 2021, sales revenue is 7.3 billion. Then this is what you call revenue collection. So they sold 7.3 and collected only 5.3. So there's a deficit of 2 billion. It's the same for 2020. 2020 is even worse. They sold 6.8 and collected 4.6. So every year, when we were living, we had brought down the losses to 21%. Under this government, the losses have gone up by 70%. So even if they take all the power and they sell the power, they can pay only 70% of that power. So the finance minister then steps in and pays the difference of the 2 billion. So they've gathered all that 2 billion, 2 billion, 2 billion. And then Baumia comes to stand and say that, oh, this money that has been paid is called excess capacity. That is not excess capacity. If you are unable to collect the monies and there's a revenue shortfall and Minister of Finance has to pay, because if you don't pay, the power cannot be produced, that is not excess capacity. The next one is that they say Ministry of Energy study in 2018 identified 498,035 street lights with 22 862 LEDs. So of our almost 500,000 street lights, only 22 are LEDs. So the street lights are burning and taking a lot of power. Estimated annual consumption is 649 gigawatt hours. Estimated cost is $108 million per annum. Public lighting levy, the amount we collect to pay, covers only 30% of that. So of the $108 million, ECG is able to pay only 30%. You can't go and tell the power generators that we collected only 30%, so we can't pay you. Government has to step in and pay. That is not excess capacity. Third one, forex losses. Forex losses for 2021 alone was estimated at 867 million cedis. So every year, almost 1 billion forex losses. Because the last time they announced the tariffs, the cedi to dollar was 5.6. Today it is 8. So if you make a loss of 1 billion because of the mismanagement of the economy, the cedi is not performing, and the ministry steps in to pay, that is not excess capacity. The very final one has to do with fuel. And I have fuel here, gas. Although gas payments are to be made to the Petroleum Holding Fund, they were paid directly to gas suppliers and service providers. So instead of the Ministry of Finance allowing the money to pass through the normal channel, what they did in 2017 when they are is to create another company. One of them is called Stratcon Energy. It belongs to them. I know their family members who are involved with Stratcon. And then insisted that Car Power, AXA, and the other companies should no longer buy their fuel. This new company should rather buy fuel for those thermal plants. Fuel is normally a pass-through. Instead of doing a pass-through, anytime they supply, an operator pays them directly. He pays them directly from the ministry and accumulates all of that and say that that is excess capacity payments. So if you strip those monies and the payments, you would see that most of them are power that has been produced, generated, consumed, and billed. It's just the inefficiencies. They told us that the energy sector, our power is so expensive. Under President Mahama, we got Gridco to upgrade our lines from 161 to 330. Today we are exporting 200 megawatts of this power that we claim is expensive to Burkina. The Burkinabes are requesting for another 70 megawatts. Gridco needs 5 million to beef up their primary substation so they can export that power. They haven't gotten that money yet. We were told that Ameri was not necessary. Today, Ameri has to be relocated to Kumasi in order to beef up system reliability and resilience. And the minister himself says that we're going to generate $31 million from Ameri from power exports. And we're going to keep Ameri for another 20 years. The Minister of Finance appeared before Parliament. Not the propaganda one that Baumia does. Before Parliament, all of us were there. He told us that total payments, including this reserve margin and all that, for 4 years was less than 1 billion. And yet Dr. Baumia at this forum insisted that he pays $1 billion per annum. When we challenged them, he said the Minister of Finance has his figures, and he also has his figures. The Vice President doesn't make any payment. All these payments ought to be made from the National Accounting System, and it's the Ministry of Finance that keeps them. So let me state on record and authority that that 17 billion is nothing but a figment of the Vice President's own imagination. It is not true. They haven't paid 17 billion for excess capacity. If take-or-pay agreements were that bad, just recently, under his chairmanship as head of economic management team, they have signed a take-or-pay agreement with Tema LNG. And that LNG is the most expensive LNG in Ghana because it is indexed to crude. So anytime crude prices go up on the spot market, that price also go up. They've just renegotiated our gas agreement with WAPCO. And they've included that 50 SCAF whether we take it or not, it is a take or pay agreement. So the level of dishonesty is just too much, and that is for the energy sector. Now you talk about the finance minister's companies. Yes, Black Star Line Brokerage, owned by Charles Adubuahin, and Kenoforete's own company. Soon after assuming office, they decided that they will constitute another layer. Because when we are going for bonds, all government does is that we get a lead bank, and then you syndicate and we raise the money. They said no. They will create another layer known as bond market specialist. What bond market specialists do, we don't know. And they charge a certain percentage from every dollar that we borrow. And if you look at the volumes and transactions, a chunk of it was given to Ken's company and that of Black Star Line. So they make direct benefit from every borrowing that happens as far as the National Accounting Framework is concerned. So we're having a group of people who are benefiting directly from borrowing. Why wouldn't they borrow recklessly? And today look at where we are. And like what he said, COVID. The finance minister himself came and accounted before Parliament. He confirmed that they spent 8 billion in 2020, 4 billion in 2021. When you add the two, it is 12 billion. Revenues that they raised in terms of how much they got 19 billion. So like he said, after spending the 12 billion, there was 7 billion extra, and they used it for budgetary support. Now ask yourself, where did that 19 billion even come from? Because you see, that is expenditure. You spend the money. You are then asking yourself where the money came from, because maybe you'll be servicing it. That is what put that strain on you. Because for the money, when you spend, it's not even a problem, but where did the money come? Because maybe as you spend, you need to go and pay. 1.2 billion of that amount came from the stabilization fund. These are monies President Mahama accumulated before leaving office. 1.2 billion. 10 billion came from the Bank of Ghana. We are not paying any interest on that money. We only start servicing that facility in 2025. Another $1 billion, equivalent to almost 6 billion, came from the IMF, which is the Rapid Credit Facility. We are not paying even $1 on it. We'll start servicing it in 2025. The World Bank gave us free money. The European Union gave us money. African Development Bank gave us money. All these monies, we are not paying 1 peso on them now. Ken has decided that he will front load everything to 2025. So if you look at what they are saying, you rather benefited from this COVID. Because you got 19 billion, spend only 8 billion, and even that 19 billion you got, you are not servicing it now, both interest and principal. So that's the reality we are facing. The truth of the matter is that they borrowed so much, invested it in less productive areas, and now you have to start paying the money. You don't have the money. So investors are withdrawing to an extent that on the day that we're announcing that we're going for the IMF program, our bonds were trading at 50%. So you've borrowed money from me. So you pay 10% every year. I've come to a realization that you can't pay. So I tell Gabi, please, can you give me 50% and take that debt? When that happens, you are junk. Anytime your bonds are trading at the secondary market at 50%, you are junk. That is why we've got to go to the IMF. But you see, the vice president, very usual of him, always cracking jokes. I even thought he was making fun of us. Because if you listen to him and look at his old demeanor that day, it's like somebody who doesn't see the seriousness that we are faced with. Somebody who doesn't appreciate the enormity and the gravity of the situation. This is not the time for such pranks. This is not the time for such theater. This calls for serious mindedness. This calls for sober reflection so we can resolve the problem. That whole lecture, tell me one solution he gave. The whole lecture, apart from blaming everybody else. So what did he say going forward? What would government do? But you see, we would continue working and would continue pushing. I know sometimes people get angry with the minority, but I tell myself that assuming we had not passed the e-levy, these guys would have just laid this whole blame on us. E-levy has passed, and yet we've gone to the IMF. And even with that, they still want to go 6 years ago and blame Mahama. Financial sector reforms or recovery. 2021, you told us that because of the financial sector cleanup, you are introducing a financial sector levy. We've been paying for it for more than a year now. Because that's why he told us that that is the solution. That in order for the economy to stabilize, all of us should pay a financial sector levy. 5% on pre-tax of all the financial institutions. They then pass it on to it. We are paying. Then he said because of energy sector issues, this same thing Bamia is talking about, they brought a new tax, completely new. After increasing ESLA by 30%, they then brought what they call energy sector recovery levy. We are paying that amount. Then he said, oh, finally, Ukraine war, so we should pay e-levy. And then he said, COVID, we should pay a COVID levy. We are paying the COVID levy. We are paying COVID levy. We are paying financial sector levy. We are paying energy sector levy. We are even paying pollution levy. New levies that you've just introduced. And then 1 year after paying all these taxes, you come and tell us that, oh, we are going to IMF because President Mahama brought in power to resolve the energy situation. I think I'll leave it here.
Well, you didn't comment on the senior high school food shortage anyway.
Yeah, just quickly. You see, they tell us that planting for food and jobs is doing so well. That's what they say. That is revolutionary. If it's doing so well, it will show. And that's where I talk about expenditure. When this guy came, they decided to build some warehouses. We did a check the last time. Most of the warehouses have not been completed. So you have locked up capital. You borrowed money, you're saying you're building warehouses, they are not completed. You are paying the interest and they are generating nothing. Then they said they were doing one village, one dam.
Yeah.
So they will farm all year round. I'm telling you on authority, the whole of the Savannah region, the whole region, not even one village can boast of an existing dam that can be used for dry season farming. So you are throwing money away. Nothing to show. And now we have the reality. Serious food shortages. Nothing can be done. And even if there is the food, how do you feed somebody with 97 pesos? Under 1 cedi? I mean, it defies logic. So when we say let's discuss it and see how we can review it, don't insult us. We're also Ghanaians. We have our kids in school. We know the food they eat. We've had to buy food for our kids these days. And sometimes you have to get people to cook and send the food to the kids in school. I'm sure we could have managed it better and make some savings. That's what I have to say on that one.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Prince Henry Koforidua says, good morning. We don't have money to print textbooks, but we're able to get money to buy Pasco for final year students. We don't have money to supply food to free senior high school students, but we have money to build National Cathedral. Is this not wickedness on the part of the government? The future is pregnant, he says. Masolak Pabli says, His Excellency John Dramani Mahama and the leader Misata raised the bar as the presidency very high, but Baumia and his boss did not only lower it, they buried it completely. No bar. So we must work hard to dig out the bar and raise it higher again. He sent that from Ayawaso East constituency. Gabriela.
The sad part is that the monies that we are pumping into this dam project and this planting for food project are coming from our petroleum revenues, which is being supported through the ABFA. In 10, 15 years, 20 years, when our petroleum stock has dwindled and we are taking stock of what we benefited as a country from Ghana discovering oil, we'll look back and we'll ask ourselves, free SHS, what is the quality of the graduates we have produced? And what is the educational sector looking like? What is the agricultural production capacity of this country? And are our people having food gluts, or we are experiencing food shortages? We'll look back and we'll ask ourselves, one district, one factory, 60 million allocated. How many jobs? And what is the impact within this conversation about the structure of our economy having to be transformed? And the blessings of the oil is what we'll be looking at and asking ourselves. So what really was the impact? We say we've invested in irrigation dams. The people who are put in charge of these dams came to tell us that the monies you're allocating to them can't do proper dams, so they are doing dugouts. What functional dam will you provide to these communities, except just wasting and throwing the money away? At the end, who is actually taking stock? A great minister who is preparing and lacing his boots to come and vie for presidential candidate, who told us that the donkeys were carrying the fertilizer out and that the bunch of plantain was 5 cities when we were all complaining. Sana, I can tell you on all authority that today, there's a crisis in the retail market for poultry and imported fish products. You know what is going on? Serious kalabule. The wholesalers who are importing these products are only releasing about 50% of their stocks to the retailers to buy. The old stock they are holding, they are waiting to increase the price, and then they will blame depreciation of the currency. So poultry, chicken thigh, chicken wings and the rest, that was going for 12 cedis just 3 months ago. Today is 18 cedis. And they are waiting to increase it to 22 cedis by August. They haven't imported anything new. And they are just allocating prices to themselves. But Minister for Agri, who should be focused on how we are building the poultry industry, is preparing to come and contest for presidency. On what record? On what record? Such abysmal performance in government. All of them prepared for presidency. The presidency has been cheapened so much that now even me, Gabriela Titi, right now I can even qualify to become president of Ghana. Young students in secondary school, we are spending roughly between 400 to 600 million of petroleum revenues on free SHS alone, which should include their feeding. Now, you are not feeding them because buffer stock that should be going around to buy the commodities to supply to the schools is broke. Last time government, I think, released some 200 million, but that was to cover the debt that they owed. So now they have no money to now take in new allocations. The Ministry of Education had to do some quick skirmishes to come up with some few commodities to go and supply to the schools, to hold them for the time being. For how long will those supplies hold? Because all the school administrators that have been here in radio interviews talking are talking about reduced fractions that have been allocated to them. Where are they going to get the rest of the food? Total mismanagement of this country and the economy of this country. Every sector is in shambles. Every sector in this country is in serious anarchy. And yet, as I said, they're going to gather at Accra Sports Stadium to tout some credentials which are non-existent and records which are non-existent. Phantom excitement just to go and excite themselves there and tell the people of Ghana what miraculous things you have done in this country. Pure propaganda beyond anything else. School feeding program. They attempted to increase the scope to get more schools on board. Even the ones who are being fed, I'm not talking about the basic level. I've left secondary school. The basic students now also have same problem. You are feeding them under 1 cedi per child. Today, the smallest egg you will get is 1 cedi 20 pesos. What proper food are you cooking for these children? And the most annoying part, we have a whole policy since Kufuor's time. We've been attempting to develop our local production of rice. So from the north all the way to southern Ghana, we have so many farmers who are into this venture. But yet, under school feeding, you are buying imported rice to support school feeding from primary school all the way to the secondary schools. I think was Mr. Pratt on Good Morning Ghana, one of these morning show programs, and one of the managers for Avnash texted in. They produce what's the name of their rice?
Domestic rice.
Yes, Royal. I think it's called Royal or something. Very popular rice. They are complaining that they approach buffer stock to look at taking products from their processing plants to supply the schools. They refuse them. And this is a factory in northern Ghana, a Ghanaian factory, but you go and sell Vietnam and Thailand rice to school children. How are they going to develop the taste to take honestly, Charlie? The whole system is just in shambles. The whole system, the whole country is just in shambles. Nothing just works in this country anymore. So I feel sorry for those poor children who have been put in school and are having to eat cocoa without sugar. If you don't have sugar, you eat dry cocoa, no bread. If you can't, if you don't have any money to go outside and buy your own food, I'm sorry, your children will starve. All because of Akufo-Addo and Bawumia's mismanagement. But as I said today, they've gathered there to go and excite themselves. No, all that is propaganda and license showmanship. The real verdict, the reality of the Ghanaian, they know the truth of what their children are going through. When we were secondary school, even the meat, the fish that they shared, what was the size? And then imagine in Akufo-Addo's administration where the food is even non-existent at all. Total starvation.
Thank you. Edo Dongote says Bawumia's convoy will soon start to drive on the Ghana card. What kind of vice president is this one? That is one. Mr. Pratt?
Nothing much to say. I mean, except that if you look at the school feeding program, the allocation for the school feeding program is actually, I think, 92 or 97 pesos per day per student. That alone tells the whole story. But beyond that, we've also come up with a regulation which says that the food must be obtained by the Ghana Buffer Stock Company. Yeah. And the Buffer Stock Company has no money. Simply has no money. And when it came to crisis, it went to the Agricultural Development Bank for loans to be able to buy the food to feed the students. So we have created a hole in the Agricultural Development Bank. There's a huge hole in the Buffer Stock Company, and the providers, the private providers, also have huge holes in their account. It's a total mess. It's a complete mess.
Well, thank you. Maybe I can go through a few of the messages on Facebook. Ayu Farouk in Tamale says, when everyone is running away from defending the NPP failure to perform, the vice president is still defending his own failure to control the broken economy. He collapsed. That's Ayu Farouk. There's also, Stokers Zero, who says, Ghana's calamity is yet to come. With the DJ says, exactly the IMF and the World Bank are not there to take Africa out of poverty. They are being used to make the African lazy to explore deep into our potentials. We are the market of developed countries, but will never see us dictate the pleas of the world's economy. Now they are thinking of, importing sugar cane for a sugar factory. So was it worth putting up the factory in the first place if we're going to use the profits to import the raw materials? This is, some more. Zelda Glass says, can you ask Honorable John what the minority is doing about the missing money that was transferred from GCB account to an unknown account as captured by the Auditor General's report? That was our taxes collected internally. David Oforiaye says the fundamental restructuring of the economy cannot be undertaken by the current crop of morally bankrupt and reprehensible political leadership. Uncle Kwesi, the injection of that money will enable them to lie more and more and to cook up more figures to muddy the situation. Nila Ejata says, I saw Edubuahin led MPP, J. Kufuor's MPP, when in those days the NDC was tagged to be politically violent. But in this time, the violent ones are showing their true character. Will Agbonoosi says, okay, Will, I hear you. Audu Musa says, good morning. No wonder the mother serpent of corruption has equaled Ghana's inflation of 29.8% to that of Kufuor's 29.8% in 2003. This is catastrophic leadership. Richard Allah says, Sana, what's wrong with Baumia? His wife Samaria needs to take him to the... Okay, that's a bit far. Levi Ariel says, MPP wants TV stations that cook Danado as Messiah for Ghana to cover their program, but Pan-African is not one of them. Benjamin Dumata says, is there no one advising Free Akoto, the agric minister, to stop wasting his money for his presidential ambition? If he could not handle the agriculture ministry, how can he rule Ghana as a country? John Paul Tate says, Ghana, our beloved country, is bleeding. May God grant us mercy. Robert Datha, Senator, MPP National Delegates elections, the highest bidder who will win the race. Audu Musa, if you had 500 billion cedis as your revenue and had nothing to show and crying for a little below $3 billion, this is the worst leadership Ghana has ever had. Hilda Wowonyo said, where is the sinking fund Seteco established? What has government done with it? And why are they not putting any money down for payment of all the debt they are accumulating? Jinapo should tell us. He said government and then he said Jinapo should tell you. Maybe it's the other one. Samuel Adakwa Banfo says, good morning. Attention, Senator. Okay, noted. Yes, somebody do my attention to that. Monday William Yukunu says, Mr. Kwesi Pratt is right about the economy. If the president parked ministers in charter flights and roaming around, did they pay with CDs when they were going around? Gal Alice says the MPP would destroy itself by electing Dr. Baumia. This is no rocket science. Only sycophants may sing the praise. A man, a book doctor who could not defend his own stance. Few more. I think Asamo Andrew says, I don't know what came to Baumia. How did he compare interchange and Ghana card? He doesn't sound like an economist at all. It's unfortunate. Peter England says, Honorable Jinapo is really making my day. His knowledge in finance is deep and need to preserve him well for the party. He's a great asset to the party. He sent that from Western North region. Solomon Agbonohevi says, Baumia has become the devil's advocate, defending the Achim mafia gangs who drove Ghana's economy into the ravine. Bedu Kwame, my concern is about setting a good example to politics in Ghana. I think he said that he was the one who was proposing the impeachment. Neil Artis says, Kenofoyata is gaining from borrowing and yet had the gas to tell Ghanaians that he does not take salaries for us to believe that he's working for free. Mam Piero, where is the sky train they promised? Ghanaians are suffering under Nanado government, and we are sick and tired of all this. Ebenezer Mankodan Mbo says NDC should also organize a press conference to counter what Baumia has said by setting the record straight. And there are several other messages that were sent to me whilst the show was ongoing. Several messages on Facebook. I can't go through all of them. At least I've gone through. Okay.
So this 35, we clearly believe is padded.
Okay.
And so we're going to take up that. We also have an issue with Tor. We have an issue with Post.
Okay.
I have a lot of issues, but you see, we want to take them one in a week, so that we can deal with them. So next week, we are handling another matter, and some other matters are GMPC. That's coming up. We'll deal with all of them consistently and decisively.
Well, Seidu says, Senator, tell Honorable Jinapo that one of the dams apparently a dugout is in the home district of our Kumsen, who was in charge of the Special Initiative Ministry. It's rainy season now, but there's muddy water in that small pothole dam. That is from Seidu. A few messages. Okay, positive change, Madina. This MPP government has no shame at all. They must accept responsibility for their incompetence and ineptitude and stop blaming former President Mahama, COVID, Russia, Ukraine war for their failures. They must eat back their sputum and allow the IMF to help them rescue this country from complete collapse. That's positive change in Medina who sent that. Okay. Thank you very much for those messages sent to us on the show today. Thank you once again. And a big thank you to our affiliate station, let me quickly acknowledge them. Very, very important. And let me say a big thank you to Ahunto 92.3 FM, which is also based here in Accra. Shine FM in Akachi 96.9, Hills FM Adakru 91.7, Nyawasi Radio Katakrachi on 89.7, Sela Radio Dabala 97.1, Diamond FM Tamale 93.7, Bewa Radio in Yendi 106.5, Radio Kitawan Saboba 95.7, Benya FM in Elmina 105.7, Cape FM. Okay, somebody said I shouldn't mention Cape FM again. They don't hear the show on Cape FM. Global FM 105.1 in Hope, Vota 1 TV, Zeps FM in Zabila 95.9, and True FM 92.5 and others. So thank you all for picking this show live. A big thank you to Mr. Kwesipajina, who is managing editor of the Inside newspaper, General Secretary of the Socialist Movement of Ghana. It's wonderful to have had Honorable Jinapo on the show. First time I am hosting you on the show. So I was nice to have you. He's member of Parliament for Yape Kusogo, ranking member on Mines and Energy, and a member of the Finance Committee. And wonderful to see Gabriela. Hope I get to see her more. The school matter is a big issue. Well, a big thank you to every one of you who made time to watch. And a belated happy birthday to you, by the way. Yes. So we are done for today. We are going to find the cocoa and watch what is happening at the MPP Delegates Conference. We thank them. We thank them for that advice. It's well taken. And we wish them all the best as they go through their conference. And thank you once again. Enjoy the rest of your weekend and have a fruitful week. We are back same time next week with another edition of the Mother of All Talk Show, Alhaji and Alhaji, live on Pan African TV and on Radio Code.
Truly African.
Will always be by your side, celebrating with you in moments of joy and happiness. Enjoy your everyday life with a slice of cheesy pizza. Cheesy pizza, your way.
Watch me. Yeah, chilly, yeah, I'm down too. Papi, just wanna know, today by my side. Today by my side. Watch me. Share me on, oh mommy goodie, oh mommy pity, oh mommy nije, say you wanna try, oh fanka baby, oh mommy pity, oh mommy nije. My prayer was so shame. I find a mother in Wadu crumbs way. Wawudo kukwai mo.